I asked you for anonymous questions. You gave them to me. And as World's Strongest Man winner, it's up to me to answer these for you. Now, there's one that came up multiple times. No, I don't have an OnlyFans. No, I'm not starting an OnlyFans. And I know who's asking for this. I'm not deluded. I know there are very large, hairy men very excited to see me naked. It ain't going to happen. You could do the math. I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much. Appreciate the compliment. Never happening. Into your guys' questions now. First off, cramps in chest while doing heavy singles in deadlift. Is it because of a narrow grip or what? Well, potentially. The wider your grip is, the more you're going to rely on upper back, and the closer your grip is, the more you're going to rely on your legs. Now, as your arm crosses inside the shoulder line, there's going to be a natural inclination for you to start to squeeze. Also, when we think about pulling the bar into us, our pec is an adductor of the arm. That's why it brings the humerus closer to the body. You can inappropriately cue the pecs to pull the bar over, just like you would on a dumbbell pullover. But we want to engage the lats, not the pecs. So you're going to try to break the bar this way and externally rotate. You should see your elbow point out in front of you when you go to start your deadlift. Now, if there's any sort of chest pain during a heavy deadlift, my first recommendation is go get it checked out. But biomechanically, that could be a good place to go afterwards. Number two, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? I wanted, when I was very young, to be a professional hockey player, but that quickly evolved, probably earlier than most kids. And there was two things that I wanted to do, and I was deciding as like a 9-year-old between being a criminal defense lawyer and being an entrepreneur. I don't know why. I don't know why I thought that was good. It was almost like the ultimate devil's advocate job with the lawyer and entrepreneur. My grandpa owned his own business, and he was really inspiring to me. And I've been blessed enough to be able to go the entrepreneurial route. So I think I'd be making younger Mitchell proud. At least I like to think so. Which lift or machine do you think is underrated? Underrated. Let's see. People don't do a lot. I'll answer this in the context of strongman. I am always baffled by the number of strongmen who don't squat on a regular basis. A high bar close stance squat is going to translate over to all triple extension and to all of your moving events. I don't see how that isn't something that every single professional and amateur strongman does at least once a week, if not twice a week, because the payoff is just so large. It will also build your deadlift. So I would say squats are the top of the list. I'm a basic guy when it comes to training. You don't need all of the particular this and particular angle that. You'll see in my programs linked in the description and in the pinned comment that it is really straightforward scientific principles applied well. If you do that, you're going to get to a really good place. Next question. How can you properly peak in powerlifting? I have my first powerlifting meet coming up, and I'm not entirely sure if I'm doing it right. That's a great question. That is a really good question. Okay. Now, the general principle of peaking for powerlifting is that over the weeks, as you edge closer to your competition, your intensity is going to ramp up and your volume is going to come down. So you might start 8 weeks out. You might do sets of 5. You might do a 3x5. And then you might decrease the reps over time to the point where you're doing a 3x1 or a 2x1 a few weeks out, somewhere close to your 1 rep max. Your work capacity will decrease, but your strength will increase. And then a week, maybe a week and a half, depending on your experience level and your age out from the show, is when you're going to drop those weights right down to make sure you're nice and fresh for the competition. My best recommendation, genuinely in this case, is go check out those programs in the links, the pinned comment and the link in the description. I have a powerlifting peaking program, and it not only goes through the program, but it also teaches you how to peak. It gives you a much more complete answer than I just did there. If you can't afford it, hopefully that gives you some context to how you would peak. Ultimately, though, if it's your first meet, focus on having fun, focus on going out there and doing the best that you can do. Try not to put too much pressure on yourself and just get stuck in. Next question. If you were in charge of World's Strongest Man, what 6 events would you pick for the final and the weights? All right. Loaded question. All right. 1 would be a loading race. Now, I think loading races are good, but I think they're often too light and it turns it into a sprint. So I would have some sort of pre-exhaust. So I'd go maybe a 120 kilo bag. And for me, it would be a 20-meter course, not a 10-meter course. 20-meter course, I would have 120, 140, 100 No, let's go 120, 150, 180, and a 200 kilo sandbag. So the guys who are fast will get a couple done fast and get rewarded for that. The guys who are out of shape will burn out very quickly and get punished for that. But the guys who are reasonably fit and very strong will be able to get all those sandbags and they will be able to load them. That would be event number one. Event number two, we got to have a deadlift in there. I think raw deadlift for max is probably the best thing you could do. Just like we did at the Shaw Classic, 3 attempts, raw deadlift for max. Next up, I would do a log press for reps. I would make it heavy, probably somewhere in around the 190 kilo mark, maybe a 200 kilo mark, maybe the Austrian oak from the Arnold. I think that would be appropriate. So we've got a loading, we've got a deadlift, we've got an overhead press. Next up, I think something truck pull related. I think that's definitely useful. I think it tests quite a bit. Now, how would I do it? I think I know how much hate it got. I know how poorly people think it went, but something like the Iron Bull would be a really good thing to have at Worlds. Now, yes, there'd be a few modifications needed, but something that it's not just pure momentum and rolling, because I think that's the issue with a lot of truck pulls, is that it rolls and all the time just becomes so close and everyone's capable of roughly the same thing. And it either is way too hard or way too easy. And I think if you did that, even if you did like a Wheel of Pain or something of that nature, that would be good. Now for event number 5, I would have a medley. Now, just like they do at the Rogue Invitational, I would have 2 implements that contrast each other. It would be one movement related event and one static related event. I think it would be cool to do something like a, let's go yoke into arm over arm as event number 5. And event number 6 would be Atlas Stones, but I think Atlas Stone runs are way overrated. I think it's mostly testing speed. Worlds has got pretty good with it, where it is very challenging and being stronger is a huge benefit. But I liked the method that we did at the Shaw Classic this year, where you pick the heaviest stone that you think you're capable of. And that's it. Because imagine the moment guys go out one by one, and then the last guy has to lift a particular stone to win World's Strongest Man, and he knows what that stone is. And I think that would create some really iconic and dramatic moments where sometimes in some years, say like when Alexi won, I believe when Eddie won, you had to wait and wait for the results for them to actually celebrate. I think it would be way more magical for that person just to go, this over this bar, you win, that's it. So those would be my 6 events and at World's Strongest Man. Next question. Someone says, I'm having a lot on my plate and I can only sleep 5-ish hours on weekdays. Will I still make gains? Yeah, to a point you will. And there's genetic variation in how much you need to sleep. You know, those are one of my 3 pillars of recovery: sleep, life stress, and nutrition. If sleep isn't good, I think you really need to make sure your life stress and your nutrition is on point if you want to get to a really good level. But yeah, you can make progress on poor sleep. Your injury risk goes up. The rate at which you can improve goes down, but you can still make progress. It also depends where you're at. If you were me and you were sleeping 5 hours a night, you probably couldn't push ahead. But if you're a novice or an intermediate lifter, that's not the end of the world. And honestly, most things aren't the end of the world for intermediate and novice lifters. Just make sure you get to the gym and make sure you train relatively hard on a consistent basis. You're going to make good, solid progress. How did you increase your deadlift strength so much? Your attempt at 505 was crazy. I don't believe that I did. I don't think my max has changed all that much. I think Deadlift World Champs in 2022, I missed 470, but it was pretty close. 475, I should say. I hit 475 a couple of years back before I started into the pro strongman scene. And max deadlift is just not something that I've had to improve a whole lot. I think training max raw deadlift for the strongest man on earth helped tremendously when I added the suit back on. I adjusted a couple of things in the suit. But I think my deadlift has always been at that level. And honestly, I think the improvement would be marginal, and marginal improvements at that level, at that, when you're already established like that, that can produce some pretty special results. And so, yeah, my 505 attempt, I think it could have even been closer than it was if I was a little bit more focused on it, a little bit more adrenaline, if I wanted to fight the weight a little bit more, but it just wasn't appropriate because I would have hurt myself. But I think a proper structured prep, I know I need a new deadlift suit for sure. So I'm going to get a new deadlift suit. And then I think the world record will fall. My actual answer is my deadlift program, down linked in the description and in the pinned comment. Just kidding. Just go get a program so I don't have to start an OnlyFans. Number 8, what is the weirdest compliment you have ever gotten? You guys would not believe. I get a lot of attention from my quads in the strongman community and by fans and whatnot. That's fine because like it's part of a movement. I get that yelled at me out of cars and people walking down the street, and it's always men, men or women over 45, I would say. And it's so weird to me to shout things at strangers, but it happens to me relentlessly. Even when they don't know I'm a strongman or anything, they're just look at my legs, yell about my legs. One chick, I was at a bar in San Diego, and I walk in and I'm behind the bar, kind of walking around, and this chick immediately just goes, "How much you bench?" And I just sort of look confused, and I walk around because I'm just going to my table, and she looks down and she's like, "Dad, how much you squat?" Like, the answer is always, please leave me alone. Please do not shout at strangers. Next question. How would you plan a deload week for middle-aged people? I'm deloading every 5 to 6 weeks myself, and starting workouts after deloading always leaves me super tired. Great question. The way that I always structure this when I'm giving blanket advice is the first half of the week, you decrease the number of sets by 50% and you decrease the load by 30%. In the second half of the week, you decrease the number of sets by 75% and you decrease the load in the second half of the week by 20%. So you follow that formula and then you're all good. I would look at those 3 recovery metrics because age is a big factor, but get those 3 things right: sleep, nutrition, and life stress, and you should be able to recover relatively well. I think deloading every 5 to 6 weeks is pretty good. My personal guideline for people is every 4 to 6 weeks, but that would be my recommendation. I would also look at how intense you're going in the first week back after a deload, and maybe if you want a little bit more guidance, go out, reach out to a coach, get one of my programs, get one of someone else's programs who you trust. Regardless, just reach out to someone who you think is going to be able to teach you. And then once you learn it, you learn that for life. Last question. What is the worst lifting advice you've ever been given or have heard in the gym? I don't really get advice at all from strangers, as you can imagine. Oh, okay. I'll tell you the worst person I've ever met at a gym. When I was training for powerlifting, I was back in Guelph. I hope this guy sees this because I still hate him. And I hate very few people. This guy would be top of my list. I was training back in Guelph. I was deadlifting and I ended up hurting myself. Canadian medical system is beautiful. Not at all, by the way. But anyway, I didn't get diagnosed, so I don't exactly know what happened, but it was to the point where I needed an ambulance to come to the gym. I took a stretcher out of the gym. It was humiliating. And yeah, I was just in too much pain. I couldn't walk. I literally couldn't walk. And one of the personal trainers there, he was going around telling members what an idiot I was for lifting heavy, and that it's just so unnecessary and such a big injury risk. That's the worst piece of advice I've ever heard. Lifting heavy is one of the best things you can do for your health. Of course, if you push it to the extreme, there's an injury risk, and like every sport, you just have to accept that. But general people should be lifting heavy. That's actually the number one thing I think people get wrong. The average person in the gym, they're not lifting heavy enough. You'll see someone do a set of 10 and like they literally are doing it. It looks like they could be reading a book while they do the set of 10. It's pointless, absolutely pointless. You got to be somewhere close to your failure points to be able to get any sort of substantial result. Those were your anonymous questions. I don't know why they were anonymous. You could ask those normally. Regardless, thank you very much for asking. I'm glad you're showing interest. If you want to hear more from me, advice, training content, anything, go ahead, click that subscribe button, put a moose dropping in the comments. As per usual, lift heavy, be kind, and we will catch you tomorrow as we release videos every single day for you to enjoy. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow.